In life, every single one of us goes through difficulty, and at times a person may go through extreme difficulty. If you find yourself in this situation, there is a special story in the Quran that Allah Jalla wa Ala makes mention of, and that is the story of Yusuf alaihissalam and Yaqub alaihissalam. And interestingly enough, there is one page in that story. In it, there are 7 things, 7 pieces of advice that a person who is going through hardship and difficulty should practice and carry out. We pick up the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. He's been missing for many, many years. There is a drought. In the whole region. And because Allah Jalla wa Ala allowed him to interpret the dream, him and the people of Egypt have prepared. Those around have not prepared. His brothers come to him, they ask for food the first time, he gives them, and he gives them their money back. Eventually he tells them that you will not find food unless you bring your brother. So they convince their father Yaqub to send Binyamin with them so that they can get an extra share of food. What happens? Yaqub alayhi salam knows that he's already lost Yusuf so many years ago. He doesn't want to part with this child, but he has to. Eventually he parts with the child, and it becomes apparent, or apparently it seems, that he has stolen, and there is no return for him to go back home to his father. We pick up the story where the children have come home, and they tell their father Yaqub alayhi salam that one of your sons has stolen and we were unable to do anything. What does Yaqub alayhi salam say? Yaqub alayhi salam says, قَالَ بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. He says, this is something that you yourselves have beautified. He immediately knows that there's something wrong. He then says, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. And I will bear beautiful patience. And this is the first point, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam. When you're going through difficulty and hardship, you have to bear patience. Some of the Mufassirin mention that sabrun jameel is patience where there is no complaining to the creation. You only complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the beautiful patience. فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. So when you're going through this difficulty, this hardship, know that you have to be patient, and know that bi'idhnillah, it's something that will pass. Everybody goes through it. Yaqub alayhi salam, bear in mind that he was the best at the time. There was nobody better than him on the face of the earth. He was a Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he's going through this difficulty and hardship after hardship. And he starts off by saying, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. Point number 2, when a person is going through difficulty, they should have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why immediately after that, he says, عَسَى اللَّهُ أَن يَأْتِيَنِي بِهِمْ جَمِيعًا. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring all of them back to me. Yusuf, his brother, the older one who remained behind and didn't want to come home because he took responsibility. Yaqub alayhi salam still has hope. He still has hope after all these years. And similarly, when you're going through difficulty, you have to have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at him. He says, عَسَى اللَّهُ أَن يَأْتِيَنِي بِهِمْ جَمِيعًا. Indeed, Allah Jalla wa Ala will bring them back. And then he says, إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْحَكِيمُ. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most knowledgeable and he is the most wise. And this is point number 3. To have good thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not one child is missing, not 2, but 3. And it's been so many years. He doesn't complain and say something that is not good. He doesn't disrespect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, indeed, Allah is the one who is most knowledgeable. He knows where they are. He knows why he took them. And Hakim, he is the most wise. He knows exactly why I'm going through this difficulty and hardship. Innahu huwa al-alimul hakim. Eventually he turns away from the children. Allah Jalla wa Ala says, وَتَوَلَّى عَنْهُمْ, he turns away. وَقَالَ يَا أَسَفَ عَلَى يُوسُف, and he says, oh sadness, oh grief. He's grieving over Yusuf alayhi salam. And at times your difficulty and your hardship may affect your physical health. Look at what Allah Jalla wa Ala mentions about Yaqub alayhi salam. He says, وَبِيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ, and his eyes became white. Some of the Mufassirin mention that this was due to a lot of crying and weeping. And Kadhim means he was filled with sadness. Filled with sadness. Who was he? The best of creation at the time, and one of the best who had ever lived. وَبِيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. And the people around him, they don't understand. The children around him. And they take an oath by Allah. They say, قالوا تالله تفتأ تذكر يوسف حتى تكون حرضا أو تكون من الهالكين. Indeed, you will carry on remembering Yusuf. You will carry on remembering him until it's affected you so much. Some of the Mufassirin mention, until you've become sick and ill and you've lost your mind, and it will lead you to your death. Imagine, those around him are telling him that. The people who are supposed to be comforting him. That's why some of the Mufassirin mention that it was extremely bad manners and bad, extremely terrible of them to have said that to their father. تفتأ تذكر يوسف حتى تكون حرضا أو تكون من الهالكين. What does Yaqub alayhi salam say? Yaqub alayhi salam tells them, I'm not complaining to you. قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله. I'm complaining, I'm grieving, I'm forwarding, and I'm showing that all my complaints are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, directed at him. Ashku bathi wa huzni ila Allah. And this is point number 4, my beloved brothers and sisters in Islam. You have to carry on making dua. Some of the Mufassirin mention that Yusuf alayhi salam was missing for 40 years. Others mention it was even more than 40 years. We know that he went missing as a child and he only came back later on. What does his father say? His father says, I'm not complaining to you, O my children who are around me. I'm only complaining to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I.e., he's making dua, he's attached to the Creator himself. Ashku bathi wa huzni ila Allah. Not only that, wa a'lamu min Allahi ma la ta'lamun. Because he was a Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knew how to interpret the dream. He knew that it had to happen. So he tells them, I have knowledge that you do not have. Wa a'lamu min Allah. I've been given some knowledge. That's why I'm calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It has to come true. What does he tell them after that? He says, Ya bani yadhhabu fatahassasu min Yusuf wa akhih. He says, oh my children, go out and look for Yusuf and his brother. And this is point number 5, my beloved brothers and sisters in Islam. When you're going through difficulty and hardship, it's not enough to just sit back, sit depressed and do nothing about it. This father, after how many years, he's managed to pick himself up, and he tells the children, go again. He tells them, go again and search for Yusuf and his brothers. And not only that, he is the one giving them encouragement. He tells them, don't lose hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ. And then he tells them, إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. The only ones who lose hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those who disbelieve, those who reject, those who are ungrateful. As for a believer, he is not meant to lose hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Eventually we know that the brothers reach Yusuf alayhi salam and they complain. They say that we've come with wealth that is not befitting to buy anything. It's not befitting to buy anything, so give us some sadaqah. وَتَصَدَّقَ عَلَيْنَا. Imagine Yusuf alayhi salam at this point, the highest authority in the land. He sees his family going back and forth, back and forth. What must he have thought? These people are now asking me for sadaqah. They begging me, they my own family. And they saying, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَجْزِي الْمُتَصَدِّقِينَ. Allah is the one who rewards those who give sadaqah. Yusuf alayhi salam can't hold himself back. And he reminds them And notice how he reminds them. He doesn't blame them. He doesn't say that now we are in a place of authority and position. He doesn't reprimand them. Rather, he tells them, قال هل علمتم ما فعلتم بيوسف وأخيه إذ أنتم جاهلون. Do you remember what you did to Yusuf and his brother? And he immediately makes an excuse for them. Whilst you were ignorant, whilst you were unmindful, whilst you didn't know better. And they are shocked. They don't know what to say. So the only thing that comes to mind is, he must be Yusuf. قالوا أئنك لأنت يوسف. They tell him, indeed you are Yusuf. And Yusuf alaihissalam says, yes, I am Yusuf, and this is my brother Binyamin. And then he mentions point number 6 and point number 7, which you should bear in mind, especially if you're going through hardship and difficulty. What does he say? Firstly, he says, قَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who bestowed his favor upon us. It wasn't due to my cleverness or my intelligence or the fact that, I managed to maneuver my way into power. No. قَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Allah Jalla wa ala is the one who bestowed his favor upon us. And then he says, إِنَّهُ مَن يَتَّقِ وَيَصْبِرْ. Indeed, those who have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those who bear patience, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah Jalla wa ala does not waste their reward. Point number 6, my beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, is to have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We generally translate taqwa as doing good deeds so that we erect a barrier between ourselves and the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as well as staying away from evil. Another definition of taqwa is Allah yaraka Allahu haythu nahak. Allah Jalla wa ala should not find you, should not see you in a place that He prohibited you from being. That's part of taqwa. He told you not to be in a nightclub. He told you not to be in a place where there's haram dealings going on. He told you not to be in a place where there's ghiba and namima going on. He told you not to be in those places. By you not being there, that's part of taqwa. Allah yaraka Allahu haythu nahak wa Allah yafqiduka haythu amarak. And you should not be missing. He should not find you absent in a place that He ordered you to be in. He ordered you to be in the masjid. He ordered you to be with those who are pious. He ordered you to go out and do good with those who are doing good. So you shouldn't be absent in those places. He ordered you to seek knowledge and get closer to Him. So those places where knowledge is sought, the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sought, you should not be missing. And Yusuf alayhi salam says, وَيَصْبِرْ. And that's point number 7, my beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, is to have patience. Point number 1 we mentioned, sabrun jameel. Point number 7, why I'm repeating it again, because Yusuf alayhi salam is telling us, he says straight after taqwa, you have to have patience, because at times you may feel that you're doing every single thing correctly and right, and things only get difficult. That's because you're fulfilling the part of taqwa. Now you have to fill the part of patience. وَيَصْبِرْ. And don't worry, he says, Allah Jalla wa ala does not waste the reward of those who do good. In Surah Sajda, the surah we read in Fajr almost every Friday, Allah Jalla wa ala makes mention of Banu Israel. He says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى الْكِتَابِ فَلَا تَكُنْ فِي مِرْيَةٍ مِّن لِقَائِهِ وَجَعَلْنَاهُ هُدًى لِبَنِي إِسْرَائِيلِ. We gave Musa alayhi salam the book, we made it a sign, and we made it guidance for Banu Israel. Then he says, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا لَمَّا صَبَرُوا. We made them imams, we made them leaders. When did He make them leaders? He says, when they were patient. لَمَّا صَبَرُوا وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يُوقِنُونَ. My beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, at the end of the story, Allah Jalla wa ala says, addressing the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, ذَلِكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ نُوحِيهِ إِلَيْكَ. These are some of the stories of the unseen that we narrate to you, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Imam ibn Jarir al-Tabari rahimahullah, the famous mufassir known as Imamul Mufassirin, at this verse he mentions that Allah Jalla wa ala is telling the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam that Yes, you are going through difficulty and hardship, but know that there are those who came before you, who went through as much difficulty and hardship as you are going through, and they were patient, they forgave those who oppressed them, and they looked over and carried on. Bi-idhnillah, on another day, if there's time, we'll finish the story of Yusuf alaihissalam. But as we mentioned, the more you ponder and reflect over the Quran, you find that there are gems and there are messages directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to every single one of us. We ask Allah to make us from those who ponder over the Quran, who extract lesson, who are able to implement in our lives. Ameen. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.